Grace and peace, my dear people. Let us just deal with those internet companies again for a while. They are practicing censorship against independent news, against independent social media. They are doing it in honor of the mainstream media. Just recently, we are told that the head of Facebook had a meeting with all those mainstream media, and they have come up with a plan. This plan is to rate the credibility of news, and those that are not credible, to remove them from the internet. Another way of censoring people. We do not need Facebook and those executives in coalition with mainstream media to tell us what is true news and what is not fake news. The mainstream media has been responsible for fake news over and over, even causing wars. They even lied about what took place in Syria with regards to the chemical attacks. There were no chemical attacks. The mainstream media lied about it and spread it far and wide, fooling people. And so governments took action and attacked Syria because of the mainstream media. So we mustn't allow these people to fool us. And we do not need Facebook and these other social media giants to tell us what we should accept as news and what we shouldn't. Leave it up to us, the individual. Let us decide. But you are supposed to be a platform unbiased, allowing all to pass. And don't call fake news terrorism. Fake news, even though it is presented by the mainstream media, is not terrorism. And don't use it as an excuse for censoring other news media. We know what terrorism is, and we are not foolish. Don't take us for fools. So, we want you to look at these clips that show what has been going on. Yes, my dear people. And we also want you to see exactly the facts that there were no chemical attacks in Syria. The people were duped by the media. So let's look at these clips.
You have taken something and you have moved forward with it, exercising your First Amendment rights, and you've made a ton of money off of Facebook. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely not, because Facebook censored us for 6 months.
Now, Donald Trump introduced you all at a rally.
Okay. But let me tell you something.
He has given you...
But Facebook censored us for 6 months.
Hold on one second, ma'am. The point I'm trying to make is you all have been bashing Facebook and you've been making a ton of money. Isn't that correct?
We didn't bash Facebook. What we did was we brought it to the light on how Facebook has been censoring conservative voices like ourselves for 6 months, 29 days, 5 hours, 43 minutes, and 40 seconds. That's what they did.
Now, I can't tell you something.
Have you been making money? Have you been monetizing?
They won't let us monetize on Facebook.
So you
they stopped it for 6 months, 29 days.
So they've been messing with your money then.
Exactly.
They limited our pages, what they did.
And YouTube did also by demonetizing 95% of our videos.
Facebook censored our free speech. And shame on the ones that don't even see that we have been censored. Yet, when the Black Lives Matter people complain about it, oh, everybody is up in arms. Let me just say this here. If the shoe was on the other foot and Mark Zuckerberg was a conservative and we were liberals, oh, all fences and all chains would have broke loose. You know it and I know it. We are African-American women. If illegal aliens can come over here and build businesses, why can't we? We were born on this soil. Well, you don't have a right to silence my voice.
Well, now, I've always heard, though, that diamonds are girls' best.
They are, and they hard, too. And if I got to be hard and be firm with you, I will.
I'm just astounded that this committee would stoop to this level to be positioning you all to make more money.
You're not going to brush us off and dismiss us like we don't have merit here.
But
these people censored us for no reason. They put limitations on our page for no reason, and that was wrong.
Have you ever been paid by the Trump campaign?
No. We've never been paid by the Trump campaign.
You've never been paid by the Trump campaign?
We have never been paid by the Trump campaign.
Not $5, not $100.
We have never
What about
been paid. We have never been paid by the Trump campaign.
Let me ask a specific question. $1,274.94.
We have never
Thank you.
been paid.
You appeared on the Ingram Angle on Fox News to discuss this matter. The host, Laura Ingram, asked, did you get contacted by Facebook, and has this been reversed? Have you been contacted by Facebook?
We was contacted via Twitter on April the 12th.
You responded, we have not been in communication with Facebook. We have not been contacted. We have not spoken to anyone over the phone.
That's true. We hadn't been in contact with them. We haven't spoken to anyone over the phone.
Right, they said it was in direct communications with us, and we had not been in direct
But
communication.
did you, on that show, say that you were not contacted?
We were not contacted. We was contacted on the 12th. We was contacted on the 12th via Twitter.
All right. So are you saying that you did not lie on that show, or you did lie?
We did not lie on that show. We did that show on the 11th. We was contacted by Twitter on the 12th, by Facebook on the 12th via Twitter. Mark Zuckerberg said that they was in direct communication with us, that like they had spoken to us. They did not do that.
Did you get information from Zuckerberg or Facebook?
No.
By any means of communication?
No.
You just said you got it through Twitter.
We got it through Twitter on the 12th, on April the 12th.
The next day.
Hold on for a moment. Miss Jackson, don't try to mince my words. Let me explain to you this here. April the 5th, 2018, they took and they deemed us unsafe to the community and told us it wasn't appealable.
Have you got
that was April the 12th is when
I am the one asking questions. You're in a judicial committee hearing, and I respect you, and you're going to respect me. Now, my question is, have you gotten contact from Facebook? And Ms. Richardson may want to answer it. Have you?
No.
And you're saying under oath that you did not. And so the Twitter is not communication?
The way you're asking that question is a little confusing. No, you're asking that question and you're missing words right here.
Have you gotten any communication from Facebook?
On April the 12th, via Twitter.
And what mode was that?
That was via Twitter.
All right, so, and you got information. So your testimony that you did not is not truthful.
That is truthful.
Have you ever publicly expressed an opinion about the presidency of Barack Obama?
If I had something to say, it was during the election when they were running.
And what was that opinion?
That I didn't think he was a good president. He didn't do anything for the black community. Look at the people from Chicago, and he was from Chicago. So I had a very vocal opinion.
You stated on the record today at least 3 times, quote, we were not paid by the Trump campaign. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That is correct.
Okay. Are you aware that your testimony today is under oath subject to the penalty of perjury?
Yes, we are aware of that. We was asked to join the Women for Trump tour back in 2016. And Miss Laura Trump asked that our airline tickets be refunded back to us because we paid for those tickets when we went from New York to Ohio. I have the email right here which substantiate what happened on September the 11th whenever Laura Trump wrote to Allen to tell them to reimburse us. So that $1,274.
I appreciate that explanation. So now let me just ask you one final question.
No, it was for a reimbursement.
I understand.
That's right, not field consultant.
I've
never been paid by the Trump campaign.
I appreciate that.
As you, as an African American, you're not going to make us feel guilty because we're going to get out here and we're going to take advantage of these platforms and monetize, like everybody else do. I don't see you walking up to a white person and saying, "Oh, you shouldn't be monetizing that."
No.
So why are you, as an African American, making it?
The gentleman's time has expired.
With us monetizing our platform.
Your game.
The gentleman's time has
game.
expired.
Subtle and slowly, Facebook used one mechanism at a time to diminish our reach by restricting our page so that our 1.2 million followers would not see our content, thus silencing our conservative voices.
On April 26, popular social media commentators Diamond and Silk came before Congress to address the ever-growing issue of conservative censorship on Facebook after their pro-Trump views were deemed unsafe for the public, which led to the ultimate censorship of their Facebook page. The duo brought forth several censorship tactics used, such as algorithms, incorrect labeling of their page, and the inability of their followers to like, share, and be notified when they uploaded new content.
These biased algorithms are tactics designed to pick up on keywords, thus telling the pages how to behave in ways that repress and stifle express ideas, including shadow banning, which block our content from being seen by our followers while depriving our brand through the demonetization of our videos. Followers stopped receiving notification when we posted videos and content. Followers was also mysteriously unliked from our page.
But Diamond and Silk are not the first social media conservatives to be subjected to this kind of censorship. Earlier this month, Terrence Williams, also popular for his pro-Trump views and comedic stance on political topics, was also censored when he posted hateful comments he was receiving on his Facebook posts. Facebook, Google, and Twitter have been accused many times of trying to censor conservative views, with the CEO of Twitter even retweeting an article calling for his bias against the GOP, the Conservative Party, and calling for civil war in America. While there is definitely a war being waged on the First Amendment rights of conservatives on social media, the suppression of their voices has only made them louder.
Facebook censored our free speech, and shame on the ones that don't even see that we have been censored. Yet, when the Black Lives Matter people complain about it, oh, everybody is up in arms. Let me just say this here. If the shoe was on the other foot and Mark Zuckerberg was a conservative and we were liberals, oh, all fences and all chains would have broke loose. You know it and I know it. But what I find appalling is that these Democrats, they don't want to take up for our voice.
Democrats would be in the street. Democrats would be in the street right now marching and calling him all type of racist.
As you navigate through social media, remember that if the freedoms of one of us are oppressed, the freedoms of all of us are suppressed.
Where the right demonizes the left or the left demonizes the right. You can't even have a policy difference anymore. And I'm wondering, Ms. Hardaway and Ms. Richardson, do you feel as though you've been demonized?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Our brand has been tarnished. We've been lied on. They're saying it's a Facebook hoax. This is not a hoax. People, lives, and livelihood has been damaged from what these giant techs do to people. They pull the rugs from up under them. And then I hear people say, well, oh, this is a private entity. This is not public. Well, they went public in 2012.
This is a separate issue. There's a cultural thing going on out there where it's not okay just to have a disagreement anymore.
Right.
Right.
You know, it's people have legitimate policy disagreements in our country.
If this is a platform for all ideas, then anything about my political, I should not be categorized through Facebook based off of my political affiliation.
Right.
There shouldn't be a mechanism placed there with Facebook to say what my political affiliation is.
And we should start learning how to agree to disagree so that we can get along in this world, so that we won't bicker back and forth. We should use this here as a bipartisan effort to bridge the gap so that we all can have free speech. And we shouldn't act like it don't exist. We shouldn't act like that we're not being censored. That's what really irritates me. It infuriates me.
I turn on one of the networks and I see Donald Trump, who's not very popular. I'm saying, what are you talking about? In fact, you saw the poll came out that I'm above Obama. No, but then you turn to the fake news and they go, Donald Trump, who's not very popular. And I'm saying to myself, how did they get away with it? Rasmussen, it was very accurate for the election, one of the more accurate polls for the election. And you're in that category and you get nothing but bad publicity. Now, it's fake publicity.
From fake news to fake publicity, certainly indictment of the media has been central to both President Trump's candidacy and his presidency. Let's bring in Diamond and Silk social media stars and Trump supporters. Ladies, good morning. Thank you very much for being here. So the Trump campaign also released what they're calling an accountability survey, asking people these questions. We're going to put them up on the screen. They say, do you trust the so-called mainstream media? Which issues do they do the worst job of reporting on President Trump? Do you feel they're too eager to slur conservatives? And do you believe they don't report on Democratic scandals? I would presume you agree with a lot of those, but this survey and this argument, is it resonating with the American people?
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think people are tired of the very fake news, the left-wing media spreading lies. I mean, deliberately spreading lies and wanting you to go on with that narrative. You know, they supposed to be free press, but they're trying to be a control press where they control the masses of people with their fake news narrative, and it's got to stop. And I am so happy that the Trump campaign is bringing awareness to this issue. Maybe Congress should call them up there to the Hill to see what's going on with the media and why do they keep smearing people like they do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, it's a real problem and something that's been addressed time and time again by the campaign.
Well, speaking of the media, so there is a new report out talking about the White House Correspondents Association. They say it has now been exposed that it regularly spends 85% of their revenue on annual party, not on scholarships, what has mainly been known for. Are you surprised by this?
Well, that's very surprising. You know, they always point the finger on the other side, but look at them. It sounds like this here could be, I think, could be a slush fund. You know, if you're going to take 85% and you're going to spend that on a meal and to bash somebody and only use 15% on what it's supposed to be used for, what are you doing?
That's right.
What are you doing? And it looks like somebody should call them out or just get rid of it altogether. Let's stop this here.
Sounds like it's been exposed, Ed, at this point.
About whether there was any evidence of Facebook or others blocking conservatives, and they indicated no, they didn't really have anything. But he didn't ask you those questions, and it's my understanding that you have personal knowledge of this. In fact, experienced this yourselves, being blocked because it actually happened to you. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And buried deep in the settings of Facebook, there is a setting called Your Categories, which Facebook label individual account as either liberal, very liberal, conservative, or very conservative. Our personal Facebook account have been labeled very liberal, thus meaning that anybody that is advertising or want to advertise, that's the only type of advertisement that we will see on our Facebook page. So if you are in a conservative and you're advertising as a conservative, your reach will not be far. The reason being is because there are individual Facebook pages that have been labeled as very liberal. Now, with this particular setting, we cannot change it, we cannot correct it, we cannot update it. This has been a default setting set by Facebook on individual personal pages. Okay. With that setting set, if you cannot change it, then guess what? Facebook control what you see. That's right.
Let me move on if I can. It's my understanding that you talk about a whole lot of different things, and one of those is President Trump, is my understanding.
Yes, we do.
And I think in general, you tend to agree with and agree with some of his policies and have been generally pro-President Trump. Is that accurate?
We love our president. We love his agenda. We love this country.
And others have found fault with that, is my understanding. You've been criticized by some for that point of view. Is that correct?
But that's their problem, not ours, because
Right.
this is our platform.
That's right. We do not solicit our page to them.
Right.
They come to our page, and there are something called troll farms. When people come to our page and deliberately and they thumb down our page, Facebook have a mechanism sitting there that when you thumb down our page, you come to our page deliberately, thumb it down, then there's an algorithm that's put in place where if you get too many thumb downs, now your page is restricted, blocked, your posts disappear, and then shadow banning is there where we can see our posts, but everybody else can't see our posts.
Do you think it's unsafe or it's hate speech to offer a positive view of our president?
Excuse me?
Do you think some people, certainly you don't think that it's unsafe or hate speech to be positive about the president, right?
It is not unsafe,
right.
Or is it hate speech
right.
to love this country and love and stand behind the president of the United States. When Obama was in office, if we had to get behind him, why not get behind this president right here?
Yeah, let me follow up. And then some other things that you've talked about, I think, that you believe that we should control our borders. As a country, we have the right to do
Absolutely. Don't you?
Yeah.
Ain't this place controlled? When I came up here today, security had to check us out.
That's
We
right.
just couldn't walk up in here. Don't you secure your house? The border should be secure.
And another thing, if illegal aliens have a right to, don't have a right, but if illegal aliens can come here to America and obtain the American dream, why can't Diamond and Silk?
That's right.
Yeah, very good. And some other things that you discuss, my understanding is things like protecting the unborn. Is that something that you've discussed in the past, that you think that we ought to protect those that have a right to have life? Is that something that
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and first of all, those are our beliefs.
Right.
And we have a right to those beliefs.
Right.
What's wrong with the way we believe? Why is it now in this country, whatever used to be right is wrong, and what's wrong now is right? If I have a belief, that's my belief. But nobody have a right to censor my free speech.
Yeah.
Nobody has a right to do it. And to maliciously and deliberately do it is what really irritates me. It just irritates me.
The first one is from Mr. Jim Hoft of the Gateway Pundit, St. Louis. And he's the one who I think initiated the beginnings of this hearing today. He has taken a pretty hard hit himself in multiple different ways. And I've watched as his views have gone from, been dropped down from 33%. Facebook page was 33% of the overall views down to 3%.
That's right.
1/11th of what it was. That would be evidence of censorship, in my opinion. A number of other comments in there that I'd like to introduce that into the record, along with a Christian publisher says Google banned it over faith we express, which illustrates that quoting the Bible can get you censored in this country. And there are multiple charts here delivered by a Gateway Pundit of other, here's Gateway Pundit's traffic, here's the President's traffic, which the gentleladies expressed in their testimony. The Young Conservatives traffic, which went from around 5.75 million down to essentially nothing, and in a similar period of time, multiple other sites, conservative sites, all of them, the graphics and the charts, it's the best material out here that quantifies this impact, I think, produced by Mr. Jim Hoft. And I hope that one day he can come and testify before this Congress as well, because my private conversation with him has been very powerful, and I ask unanimous consent to introduce these documents into the record. In hearing, no objection.
That objection be made a part of the record.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And now, where do I go with this? My first thoughts are this, that I'm thinking about a situation like Jim Hoft and Gateway Pundit, the fourth most influential conservative pundit throughout the last election cycle, watching his traffic be cut to 1/11th of what it was just on Facebook alone. Yeah. And I don't see that Jim Hoft has as much television presence, perhaps, as our Diamond and Silk have. So I wanted to ask you, Ms. Hardaway, or you, Ms. Richardson, if you didn't have a spot on Fox News, if you had to rely on just watching your traffic go down on YouTube and on Facebook and on Twitter and wherever else, would you have a chance to have a voice to express this, or could it be that because you had another outlet, this issue came up far enough that now America's watching?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because we had another outlet, because certain Republicans spoke out about it and took up for the little voices like ourselves is how this came to light. If not, we would, when they deemed us unsafe to the community, it would have been that. They told us we couldn't appeal it. We would have been out. And this is what happened oftentimes with people in our country, particularly minorities, where these big giants, they take and they put their feet on your neck. They pull the rug right up from under you and then dare you to move. You know, they tell us to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. But how can we do that when they take those same straps and use them to hang us out to dry? That is not fair, and that's got to stop in this country. And it stops today.
With everybody.
You know, I really appreciate the way you look at the American dream. I want my right to earn the American dream.
That's right. That's right.
And is there any difference in your mind between, say, Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, those, we'll call them utilities, not necessarily public utilities, but utilities? Is there any difference between them and, let's say, UPS and FedEx? If you're making your living selling things and shipping it out on FedEx, is that any different than it is making your living by pitching a message out through Facebook?
Absolutely, because listen, they have these platforms to have it where you can monetize. You can make money off of these platforms. So if you're building your brand and you're pumping money into building your brand, it is not fair for somebody to change the rules in the middle of the game. And I think that's what's happening with the American people, some of them. You change the rules in the middle of the great game, and then people are left out to dry. That's not fair.
Let me clarify this question. What if you're producing a product, and maybe it's a home little garage factory or a larger factory, and you're shipping that product out on FedEx, and FedEx decides you're conservative, so we're not going to deliver your product to your customers. Is there a difference between what's going on with Facebook and what would be going on under that circumstance?
Well, that would be, to me, discrimination.
Yeah, it's on both, discrimination on both sides.
On both sides. And listen, wait a minute. This is for all voices. No voices should be censored.
None.
And this could be bipartisan. I don't care if you're on the left or the right. The deal is that no voices should be silenced, and you should not be discriminating. If it's a platform to express all ideas, express all ideas, not just one side. Not just put it where it's one-sided, where I'm just seeing liberal views, where you have my account deemed liberal when I'm very conservative. I am a Republican, but you don't have that up there. And why are you making those decisions for me? Why didn't you give us the opportunity to put in what we are, our political affiliation? And what does our political affiliation have to do with Facebook? Just think about that.
I want to let you know that I tweeted you out to see if you were blocked on mine, and you're still alive on my Twitter. So thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. I yield back.
Diamond and Silk, the two black sisters who are very vocal about their support to President Trump in their viral videos, went and testified in front of Congress yesterday about Facebook censoring their page, which has over 1.5 million followers, and it was more entertaining than their show.
What he was doing.
Yes. Okay, before we watch them completely destroy this clown, and they do, let's go back and watch the tape and see exactly what Donald Trump said about their videos, and it wasn't anywhere close to them, quote, making a ton of money, because he didn't say that, and they're not.
I turn on my television one night, and I see these two on television. I say, they are the greatest. What is it? They became an internet sensation. I hope you've monetized it a little bit. You want to do a little routine? Come on, go ahead.
Well, first of all,
he said, I hope you monetize that. Not they made a ton of money. And even if you have a viral video that gets 1 million views, you'd be lucky to make a few $100. That's literally a black member of Congress who's upset and complaining that two black women are able to make a living off of viral videos promoting President Trump. Shameful. Of course, CNN attacked Diamond and Silk, saying that they lied under oath after they denied that they were on the Trump campaign payroll.
Trump supporters, Diamond and Silk, a.k.a. Lynette Hardaway and Rochelle Richardson. They insisted to Congress today that they were never paid by the Trump campaign, even though documents the Trump campaign itself filed with the FEC show they were paid $1,274.94 back in November of 2016 for field consulting.
Fake news.
Ms. Hardaway, I think you stated on the record today at least 3 times, quote, we were not paid by the Trump campaign. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. You have an FEC document that clearly indicates that the two of you were paid for field consulting by the Trump campaign. That's just one document. There may be others that are out here. And presumably, this was a document filed with genuineness and authenticity by the campaign of the president that you so love. And so I'm just trying to figure out
We understand
who
that this was
is
filed.
lying here.
And that's the thing about this Truth Challenge administration. It all starts at the very top.
Let me stop you right there, Don. I have to clear up this defamatory and fake news that you're spewing to your dwindling audience. Diamond and Silk purchased airfare and hotel accommodations out of their own pocket to travel to a Trump campaign event where they spoke, and then submitted an invoice to the campaign to be reimbursed for those out-of-pocket costs, and were given a reimbursement check, not a paycheck, not a donation, a reimbursement check for the expenses that they themselves paid, so they're not on the campaign payroll and didn't benefit at all financially from the campaign. The Trump campaign issued this statement yesterday after their testimony sparked accusations of perjury. Quote, the issue regarding Diamond and Silk is merely one of semantics, resulting from a reasonable misunderstanding of the campaign's reporting obligations. The campaign's, quote, payment to Diamond and Silk for field consulting was based on an invoice they submitted reflecting their costs for air travel to a campaign event. The invoice was not supported by accompanying receipts, so as a technical matter, could not be reported to the Federal Election Commission as a reimbursement, even though its purpose was to make them whole for their out-of-pocket costs. So again, it was a reimbursement, it wasn't a payment, and their net revenue from the entire transaction was $0.
Yes, my dear people, these clips that you see here show you that there were no chemical attacks in Syria, that the mainstream media allowed themselves to be embroiled in propaganda from the White Helmets and other few groups that wanted war with Syria and Iran that favors the Jews, that favors the state of Israel. So let's look at these clips that shows that no chemical attacks took place.
French President Emmanuel Macron says France will strike Syria if proof emerges that chemical weapons were used on civilians. The warning came hours after Russia's Center for Reconciliation in Syria reported the White Helmets may be preparing to stage a chemical weapons attack to provoke Western intervention. Dan Cohen has the story tonight.
Russia's Center for Reconciliation in Syria said it received a tip-off that Jabhat al-Nusra, also known as Al-Qaeda in Syria, brought chlorine containers into a village where they aimed to work with the White Helmets to stage a provocation. The Reconciliation Center, a joint effort between Turkey and Russia, received a phone call from a resident of the village of Sarakab in Idlib province about the planned incident. The center said the source told them that Jabhat al-Nusra fighters brought 3 cars packed with more than 20 cylinders of chlorine, along with personal protective equipment. There, the White Helmets conducted rehearsals of giving first aid to local residents who were supposedly suffering from poisoning, an indication that Jabhat al-Nusra and the White Helmets are planning a provocation by carrying out or staging a chemical attack and blaming it on the Syrian government. In April 2017, the U.S. cited allegations of a sarin attack when it launched dozens of airstrikes on Shayrat military base, a move that allowed ISIS to launch an offensive. Yet on February 2nd, Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis told reporters that the U.S. has no evidence that the Syrian government carried out chemical attacks and instead relied on reports from the battlefield, which could be interpreted as a de facto policy of launching airstrikes based on unverifiable information it receives from al-Qaeda-controlled territory. It's an arrangement that would benefit those seeking to provoke more U.S. intervention in Syria. With the Syrian army slowly but surely advancing towards the liberation of Idlib, it's a scenario that just may repeat.
Doubts are continuing to grow over claims of a chemical weapons attack in the Syrian city of Douma earlier this month. A number of Western journalists who traveled to the city say they are struggling to find eyewitnesses to confirm the reports. I discussed the matter with Murat Gazdiev earlier.
If you were expecting any concrete evidence of Assad's culpability or even any such suggestion, well, you were in for a disappointment.
We're just coming back from a town about 5 kilometers from here, and it has approximately 20,000 people who have fled from eastern Ghouta and above all Douma. The people there are telling us, very persuasively, that this whole story from April the 7th was staged.
There are many people I talked to, amid the ruins of the town, who said that they never believed in gas stories, which they usually put about, they claimed by, the armed Islamist groups.
These are serious journalists that we're talking about. Robert Fisk, a reporter from The Independent, he has decades of experience in the Middle East. He went to East Ghouta, to Douma, spoke to locals and witnesses and doctors working at the medical facility. All of them told him that they didn't know anyone who had suffered in this attack, who had been a victim. All they know is that someone said something about chemical attacks. As a reporter, German reporter from ZDF, there's this trend of people, journalists, coming out and saying, hold on, maybe we got this wrong, and invariably they face backlash if they go against what the media has been saying for weeks and weeks now, trumpeting that Assad did this. Suddenly, if you say, hold on a second, they come right after you. There was a retired British general who was on Sky News, I believe, and he said, it doesn't make sense for Assad to have done this. Well, look what happened to him.
What possible motive might have triggered Syria to launch a chemical attack at this time in this place? The Syrians are winning, and then suddenly you get...
Okay, I'm very sorry. You've been very patient waiting for us, but we do need to leave it there. I'm very sorry. Thank you very much indeed.
It just seems like many in Western media and Western governments already have their minds made up. They've decided they know what has happened. Look at the United States, backed by Britain and France. It launched an attack on Syria mere hours before OPCW specialists were due to arrive on the scene.
On that point, the OPCW, Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, there had been criticism that why weren't they in Duma? They're there now, right?
Yeah, they arrived on Saturday. They've collected samples, but due to how they work, their procedures, they're all very hush-hush, so there isn't a lot of information.
Where did the claims originate from? Where's this story coming out from?
Well, all pro-rebel sources. The first one was the White Helmets, which are largely financed by Western governments, pro-rebel, act as rescuers for rebel fighters, and they released videos from a hospital showing them dousing people with water, allegedly the victims of a chemical attack. Then there was the Syrian American Medical Society, which is financed again by the United States to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, and they claimed that they treated 500 people with symptoms of exposure to chemical agents. It's these two sources that were cited by almost the entirety of the media and governments. It was their reports and their videos that went out. Nevertheless, with growing opinion, growing views, witnesses, testimony that nothing such happened, you've got to question where they got this from, where this information and why this information appeared in the first place. Nevertheless, the Russian position is that we shouldn't jump to conclusions. We should wait until there's hard facts with which we can, come to a judgment.
Discussing facts, we have patriots of Syria here with us, and I think it would be the right thing to do to give the floor to the small boy here, Hassan Diab. He's only 11 years old. You can see him on the White Helmets footage. He's an alleged victim of the chemical attack. But first we would like to ask his father, Amar Diab, to say a couple of words. And after that, if Hassan wants to say a few words, he will be given an opportunity to do so. Good evening. My name is Amar Hassan. I'm a father of this little boy you can see here. I'd like to speak about the truth of what happened. My children heard the screams that they needed to go to the hospital, so they went to the hospital. They saw fires in the streets. They saw smoke. So they came to the hospital through the tunnels near our house. In the hospital, some people took my children and brought them to the ambulance, and they started pouring water on them, cold water. Now, because of that, they have suffered, and my wife explained that these children were brought to this hospital without asking their parents. Later we found out that this was a fake. We saw absolutely no evidence of chemical weapons. And all of my family members are feeling well. We were in the basement and we heard people shouting that we needed to go to the hospital. So when we were in the hospital, we went there through the tunnels. At the hospital, they started pouring water on me, cold water. Thank you.
Спасибо, маленький Хасан, за твой рассказ. Давайте продолжим разговор.
Let's continue our conversation. The next participant of our talk today, Khalil al-Jaish, Dr. Khalil al-Jaish. He's an expert in resuscitation. Good evening. We came here to inform the world on what happened in Duma, because what happened goes against what was shown in the media and spread through the media. Because the video you have seen shows the hospital, the emergency rescue department, and I have been there. I have seen what happened, and what happened had been shown on this video. Because on the 7th of April, I have been in the hospital. About 7 p.m., we had people coming in suffering from asphyxiation, but the fact is it was because of smoke. So they had difficulty breathing because of smoke intoxication. And the reason it happened was because nearby building has been bombed, and there was smoke and dust that came inside into the hospital, into the buildings, and in the shelter where people were hiding, people unfortunately inhaled all this dust and smoke, and this is why they had difficulty breathing. So the symptoms of asphyxiation were relatively mild, moderate, and we did everything that we were supposed to do. We gave them oxygen masks. We proceeded as we always do in such cases. We gave them hydrocortisone. Then a person came, one of the white helmets, and he started shouting that there was a chemical attack, that chemical weapons have been used. And after that, at the emergency care, we saw people creating this hysteria, this chaos in the hospital. They started dousing people with water. We didn't believe these people because we saw no symptoms of chemical attack, of chemical intoxication. So there were no evidence of chemical weapons use. All these things, all the people who had suffered from asphyxiation came home later that day. There were no deaths, no people died during that day. And this is the only emergency care in all of Duma. Now we're waiting for the next commentary by Abdurrahman Hijazi, another resident of Duma.
Good evening.
My name is Abdurrahman Hijazi. I'm a resident of Duma. I'm a freelancer. I do not work at the hospital. I'm just an ordinary citizen. I came to the hospital that day because I had this small problem, and about 6 p.m. I saw people coming into the hospital, claiming that they were from the civil protection. They started claiming that they had people with them that had suffered from chemical weapons. As a person who was actually inside there, I could see that these people were okay. I didn't feel any kinds of smells, or I didn't see any kinds of evidence for chemical weapons. But what they did, they create this atmosphere of chaos. They shouted, they screamed. But I can say for certain that nothing bad happened there. I didn't feel any chemical weapons. I didn't see any people beside me, any other people affected by chemical weapons. So several hours later, I came back home from the hospital. My house is about 1 kilometer away from the hospital, so I went on foot. I felt okay, and after I came home, I didn't feel any symptoms or anything that would indicate any chemical exposure. Now, as for this water dowsing performed by white helmets, what they did was they were just getting them clean because of all the dust and smoke after the explosions. So there were no evidence of chemical attack in Duma. Thank you.
Спасибо большое. Следующий у нас для выступления лаборант больницы Саида Даас.
At the lab in the hospital. Next we'll hear Saeed Daz, who works at the lab in the hospital.
السلام عليكم. أنا اسمي سعيد.
Good evening. My name is Saeed Daz.
أعمل فني مخبري في مشفى ريف دمشق التخصصي.
I work at the laboratory at Duma Hospital. I perform blood analysis and I collect blood from the patients. So this is a lab that works both for the hospital and the whole and for the emergency care. Now, it all started on Friday. There were a lot of people. There are a lot of people who suffered because of the bombings, the airstrikes. We worked at the hospital on Saturday as well, and at that day, on the 7th of April, I was at my lab, I was collecting blood, and I was transferring it to the emergency care. Now, I was in my lab when I heard that some people in the emergency care were screaming about chemical weapons. Now, after taking the remaining blood capsules with the blood from the donors, I ran to see what's happening. I came there to find that the floor has been completely doused with water. It was very chaotic. I could smell dust and smoke. But this was a result of an airstrike that happened some time before that in the streets. So the smoke just came into the hospital from the streets. I asked the doctors there what has been happening. Now, they said that it was nothing out of the ordinary, it's just people were scared. They said that this chaos started there because the people from the shelter upstairs started coming down into the hospital. Also, there were people there outside the hospital who wanted to get into the shelter. And so many of these people were also shouting about chemical weapons. So these people who were inside the hospital, they were dousing these alleged victims with water. And so we were there inside. We saw everything. We didn't put on any masks. We didn't hear any smell of chemical weapons. Because if this had been chemical weapons, we would suffer some of the effects. We would feel something, but we felt nothing. Thank you. So the next on the list is Muvafak Nasrim. He's a male nurse. Good evening. I am a paramedic officer at the Duma hospital. I was in the hospital on the 6th and 7th of April, and on the 8th of April as well. I was at the emergency care on Saturday on the 7th of April. We were receiving people who suffered from the airstrikes. There were all kinds of there were people coming about 7 p.m. with symptoms of smoke and dust intoxication with asphyxiation. So these were cases of asphyxiation. So these people came down from the shelter. So we did all we could to stabilize their situation. So as you could see on the video, there were people coming in, screaming, shouting about chemical weapons. And as a result of their shouting, people started to feel fear, they were frightened. And so there was this atmosphere of chaos, of anarchy. And one person brought a small girl, a young girl, into the hospital. We checked her, we looked at her, but we found no evidence of chemical weapons. There were no chemical weapons used on her. Didn't find any symptoms or any evidence. I was in the hospital on the 8th of April, and there was nothing that could show that there had actually been a chemical incident. Now I'd like to give the floor to the person who did not participate in this fake video by white helmets. His name is Yasir Abdelmajid. He was in a different place at the hospital, and he could see everything. Good evening. My name is Yasir Abdelmajid. I'm a surgeon at the hospital at Duma. On the 7th of April, on that day, I was in the hospital. starting from 7:30 in the morning. I was at the surgical department. During the day, we had people coming in with all kinds of wounds that were due to the hostilities that had taken place during the day and the shelling. At about 7 or 7:15 p.m., there was a person who came to the surgical area with a girl who was just about 1.5 or 2 years old. It was said that she was brought there by an ambulance and they needed to consult a surgeon. It was also said that this girl has suffered because of a chemical material, and when we saw her, her body temperature was lowered, she was wet with water, and her stomach was swelled. So I examined her, and from my point of view, from the point of view of a surgeon, she was healthy, but I was surprised that they said that she suffered a chemical attack. I examined her more broadly, and I was sure that there was nothing of that sort. I asked her if she really felt that there was some kind of a chemical used on her. After examining her, I couldn't find any evidence, any symptoms showing that she had suffered because of some chemicals. Her general health was good. There were no symptoms showing any chemical evidence, chemical weapons exposure. So I helped her to dry her clothes, and I gave her a blanket, covered her with a blanket, and once I saw that she was okay, that her general health was good, that she hadn't suffered any kinds of wounds, I gave her back to the ambulance, and for the rest of the day, for the rest of my shift, I stayed in the hospital performing surgeries to the people coming into the hospital. But as I've said, this girl, it was said that she suffered a chemicals attack. And after my examination, I didn't see any evidence, anything that would indicate that she has been exposed to a chemical weapon. Thank you. So, we still have some people who would like to talk. Now I'd like to give the floor to Ahmad Khashoggi, who has been working at the hospital, at the emergency care. His name is Ahmad Khashoggi. You have the floor.
He went outside. Mumtaz Al-Hanash, medical surgeon.
Вот мне подсказывают, что Ахмад Хашой
has just left the audience for a couple of minutes. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mumtaz Al-Hamash, who's a paramedic.
Assalamu alaikum. Greetings to everyone. My name is Mumtaz Khanash. I am with the surgical department. On the day of the incident, I was working on my blog. I would like to draw your attention to a few important issues. The first thing is that working as a medic in that hospital was a challenge because we were short on staff. And for those few days from the 6th to 8th of April, a humanitarian corridor was open, and a large number of doctors, medics went through it. So they chose to left, and we were short on staff. We worked round the clock for 3 days in a row, and working like that, as well as the high numbers of people who turned in for help, led to the fact that we could not give people the high-quality service we wanted to. We had help from people who did not have proper medical training or experience, and many of them are on the video. You can see them working haphazardly, not the way professionals should work, medical professionals. And when there was that person who claimed that chemical weapons had been used, causing panic in the emergency department, that's what happened, and people reacted to that. They started to apply medical measures the way they thought was okay, without consulting the proper medics. Although our hospital does have a special department for such cases, and there were some people in the emergency room too at the time. We were operating on them. I like to say that some people came into this surgical room. They went in from the next building. They had some difficulties breathing. They were coughing a lot. But after the medical exam, we did not see any symptoms that would indicate of them suffering from a chemical weapons attack. That was caused by inhaling much dust. Thank you very much. Thank you. I give the floor to Ahmad Al-Saur, paramedic from the emergency department of the Syrian Red Half Moon. Good evening. My name is Ahmad Saur. I am with the Red Crescent in Syria. Our emergency department was taking in emergency patients. That's what we do. We provide the first medical aid. The Red Cross is not working temporarily, and from 6th through 8th of April, it was the same. That was due to the ongoing military operation. I was working at the time, and our department was checking in patients. On those days, from 6th to 8th of April, we did not register any cases of chemical poisoning. All the people who checked in at the time, they either checked in for medical help, getting drugs, or with the injuries, such as injuries from debris, by debris. And none of those patients showed any signs of chemical poisoning. Thank you. Thank you very much. I can see that Mr. Ahmad Kashoy, administrator with the emergency department, is back with us. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Ahmad Kashoy. I'm responsible for the logical operations in the hospital of Duma. I would like to tell you what happened on the 7th of April in the hospital of Duma. At the time,
I have been living at the hospital for about half a month. At 7 p.m. I was near the entrance to the hospital. I saw a person come in with a child. He started screaming about chemical weapons. Throughout the day, we have been seeing people coming in, checking in with all kinds of wounds because of the shelling, because of the airstrikes. Now, this person came in, started shouting, created chaos. In the emergency care, there were a lot of people who were frightened. They were panicked. And frankly speaking, there were people who had problems breathing, but we have seen people like that coming in throughout the day. And we saw that this shouting about chemical weapons was used to instigate panic. The hospital in Duma is a very large building. It's enforced and at the lower floors there are many families who live there, using it as a shelter. These people fled they fled the hostilities taking place in the city. And once they heard screams about chemical weapons, they were even more frightened. This panic spread, and there were about 1,000 or maybe 1,500 people there at the time. There were people unknown to us that were filming the emergency care. They were filming the chaos taking place inside. And they were filming people being doused with water. The instruments they used to douse them with water were originally used to clean the floors, actually. All this has been happening for about an hour. After that, we provided care to these people and sent them home. There were no mortalities, no one has died. All the people who came, among them there were no people suffering from any chemical exposure. Thank you. And our final guest from Syria today is Dr.
Hassan Oyun.
Hassan Oyun.
Doctor.
He's a medical doctor.
السلام عليكم. شكرا جزيلا على الاستضافة.
Good evening.
اسمي حسان عيون.
Thank you for your hospitality. My name is Hassan Ayoun. I am a doctor with the emergency department. I was on duty on 6th through 8th of April. And I've been working with the emergency department since 2013. I started my career in Damascus. And what Dr. Montaz already said is that a lot of medical professionals left our hospital during those days because of the humanitarian operation. So we were forced to work in challenging conditions because we had to use help of unprofessionals, people who were not properly trained. For many years, people in Duma have been using car tires used or to cut and to burn them for fires. So I was working on 6th or 8th of April. My duty was, I was to be relieved from my duty on the 8th, but there was no replacement, so I continued working. Then we began to getting in patients checking in, the injured and the wounded from the military action. And that continued like that for the next day. We had from 15 to 20 people with some difficulties breathing. We gave them a check and we did not see any indications, any obvious indications of any kind of weapons. Their pupils were normal. There were no signs or indications in their bodies, in their ribs, so they were all suffering light or medium inconveniences. We gave them all the help we could, and they left the hospital in a few hours. We did not leave any of those patients for further, we did not check them in to stay with the hospital for further care. There were no complications, so with any patients on that day. That's what I wanted to say, and thank you very much. That's what I would like to add to the whole discussions. So, thus, today, the states participants to the Convention prohibiting chemical weapons and the active member of the Council of the organization, the observer state. And now, as we speak to the international community through this press conference, we are delivering evidence and testimonies indicating that what happened on Duma in Duma Hospital on 7th of April was a provocation by the white helmets. So all those people feeding off the taxpayers, especially in the first place, the United States and Great Britain.
All right, we'll dip out of that now. You've been watching for more than the last hour here on RT International. Russia's defense ministry giving a presentation on the alleged chemical attack in the Syrian city of Duma on the 7th of April to the OPCW in The Hague. The Russian representative to the UN's chemical weapons watchdog speaking, the doctors on the scene that day, crucially, Russia's head of chemical defense forces, and again, crucially and poignantly, a father and son caught up in it all with the same message. They say a chemical attack didn't happen, and that video that was so widely circulated in the hospital purporting to show something like that having happened, they say is false, a false flag. Our Europe correspondent, Peter Oliver, has been listening into all of that for the last hour or so. A lot to get through, a lot of witnesses put forward with a lot of detail, Pete, all with the same message, though. What stood out for you?
A lot of details, but one very clear message running through it. And I think it was hammered home by Alexander Shulgin, who's Russia's permanent representative to the OPCW, the Organization for the Prevention of Chemical Weapons, saying that they believe that the attack in Duma was a provocation. He went on to accuse France, the UK, the United States of tugging at heartstrings by showing child victims as they were portrayed in the media, saying that the evidence that Russia has and which they've put forward to the OPCW shows that this was, and I quote, sloppily staged. We also heard from the Syrian representative to the OPCW, who said that Syria had destroyed all of their chemical weapons back in 2013. He also refuted these claims that there was any type of chemical attack that took place. And then we heard from the Russian military representative who spoke there, Igor Kirillov. He said that if you look at the video, if you look at the actual canister, that in the video that's supposed to show the delivery mechanism of this attack, that logistically it would be impossible to deliver a chemical weapon in such a way. We have to remember that we are led to believe that on the 7th of April that as many as 70 people were killed after a chlorine and sarin mix were used in a chemical attack on this town. But then what we did hear from, we heard from some of those people that were in those videos that had been circulated widely. We heard from Hassan Diab, who's an 11-year-old boy who's filmed in those videos being doused with water afterwards. He said that we were told that we should go to hospital, and we went through the tunnels to the hospital, and we were told we'd been the victim of a chemical attack. His father said exactly the same thing there. We did also hear from doctors who were present in the hospital at the time. They said that they treated people who had symptoms of asphyxiation. They treated people who had suffered from smoke inhalation. They did not say that they treated anybody who had suffered from what you would imagine being the repercussions from a chemical attack. There was they pointed out that there was no smell, that there was no physical presence of a chemical agent on the bodies, things that you would expect if there had been a chemical attack. We heard from one surgeon who was there on the ground saying exactly this thing. So we have heard from a number of witnesses that have been brought forward by the Russian side and by the Syrian side saying that this wasn't a chemical attack. The Russian side, as I said, going as far as saying that this was sloppily staged and designed to look like a chemical attack. Certainly incendiary words. We're going to have to wait and see what reaction comes from this, but as it stands, the Russian stance and the Syrian stance on this remains the same, that there was no chemical attack in Duma and that this was some kind of provocation.
Yeah, indeed. Peter Oliver, our Europe correspondent, watching on there. So it went on for more than an hour. A lot of detail, a lot of witnesses put forward, as you say, all with the same message. Now, one of the witnesses of that incident in Duma we heard from was the 11-year-old boy Hassan Diab. He was filmed in a hospital in Duma being treated for what was allegedly a chemical attack and symptoms of it. Here's his story.
We were outside and they told all of us to go into the hospital. I was immediately taken upstairs and they started pouring water on me.
Do you remember where it happened?
Here with the hose.
Where is it?
Here it is. They poured water on me. They put me here and then took me upstairs to my mother. That's me in the video, that's me. Yes.
We were in the basement and we heard people shouting that we needed to go to the hospital. So when we were in the hospital, we went there through the tunnels. At the hospital, they started pouring water on me, cold water. Thank you.
just back to the stabilization efforts that are on hold right now. Can you explain to us exactly your perspective on the U.S. now withholding all funding for the white helmets, given that you just had them here last month and showered, positive praise for the work that they're doing?
So as we talked about the other day, the stabilization funding is under review at this time. We recognize and appreciate and are very grateful for all the work that the White Helmets continues to do on behalf of the people of their country and on behalf of the U.S. government and all the coalition forces. They're doing incredible work in rescuing in some cases, in other cases it's recovery efforts. They're an incredible group of individuals, but I just don't have any additional information for you on the funding yet.
But if the funding for them stops, does it mean that their work has gotten less good?
Their work stands for itself, and that is excellent work.
Question correct? Has funding for programs that support them?
That all continues right now. I just exchanged emails with him the other day. My understanding is that their work is still going on, and we're proud to work with them.
U.S. funding for any funds that the U.S. had?
I'm sorry?
Has the funding, any funding that the U.S. was providing to this group ended because of the pause?
As far as I'm aware, all of the work still continues. People's bills are still being paid. If there's anything that's a change to that, I'll certainly let you know.
U.S. contributions are still flowing?
As far as I know, that is all still in play.
Can you just check that though, because there's an internal State Department document that says on April 15th that funding would have ended.
I will double.
You're not going to comment.
I will double check on that. If it's an internal document, I can't. We don't comment on internal documents, but I'm not aware of one floating around if there is one that says that. Okay.
In closing, we do not need the mainstream media. We do not need social media to tell us what is fake news and what is not. Let us judge for ourselves. Stop using pretexts to censor people for the sake of the propaganda of the mainstream media to create a new world order. In the end, God will judge you for your wickedness. He will judge you for your wicked ways. And governments must stop pandering to these corporations which do destruction to society. So may God bless you until we meet again. In Jesus' holy name, amen.